Right, let's have a look at what's been happening today, then some of the latest stuff that's coming out tonight. Of course, last night was the night that the deal was agreed. Deal was agreed ridiculously late last night. In fact, it was the early hours of the morning, around about 3 o'clock, when finally got agreed. Let's have a look. Work his way through some of these headlines and find out what's happening. Where should we start? Let's start with Twitter tonight. So, as always, lots of things that have got no interest to us. But I'm curious to find out what the latest is that's coming out on social media tonight. In terms of noises on the streams, it's been fairly quiet today. Let's have a look at the Times of Gaza and see what they've been reporting this afternoon. So, how interesting. They've been really quiet since the 17th of November, not putting anything out. It just shows you really how communication inside Gaza just really stopped. Just stopped. No one's been getting anything in or out. There's times where, of course, things have been working, then other times where things have completely stopped. This was an interesting story that I saw earlier that I wanted to share with you. This comes, of course, from Al Jazeera. You just got to get through all the ridiculous pop-ups and advertisements that this paper shows for some reason, but the story's there. So listen to this. Mohammed El-Masri, professor at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies, says it's remarkable that a truce deal has been reached despite Israel's government rhetoric over the past few weeks. Now, if we remember to when Israel decided to embark on their retaliation war against Hamas, the only rhetoric that was coming out then was from Israel's side was Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that, look, everything needs to be obliterated, not just yes, of course, and everybody agrees, and countrywide, worldwide support was there, saying absolutely we need to get these hostages back, and what's happened is despicable, and just about every nation, apart from the ones that back Hamas, agreed with what Netanyahu was saying. The rhetoric then was get the hostages back, kill the terrorists, but also wipe out Hamas in its entirety. Last few days have been interesting because it seems to have changed slightly in what they've been saying, in the wording that that they were using, where focus has really turned now to, look, let's get the hostages back. But then again, this morning it's quite confusing, because this morning they came out and said the war won't stop, we'll carry on the war, even when we get the hostages out, the war continues. But there's many observers worldwide that actually think once Israel get these hostages back, that could possibly be the limit to Israel's war. Who knows? Palestine Red Crescent Society announced that its convoy has been stopped at an Israel army checkpoint over 5 hours in a post on its X Twitter account. The ambulances are carrying patients from Al-Shifa Hospital and wounded Palestinians, the group said. And this is the post that the PRCS put out. These are on Twitter. You can find them on there. I think they've got a Telegram as well. 5 hours have passed, and the evacuation convoy from the wounded and patients from Al-Shifa Hospital is still stranded at the checkpoint separating North and South Gaza. Occupation forces obstruct its passage, conducting through inspections of ambulances, putting the lives of, and he just goes on to say, thousands of patients at risk. And this was as of 7:10 UK time this evening. And this is the one that we started to read. Mohammed El-Masri, professor at the Doha Institute for the Graduate Studies, says it's remarkable that a truce deal has been reached despite Israel government's rhetoric over the past few weeks. Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu said he had nothing for Hamas except military force. He wasn't going to engage with them on any level, El-Masri told Al Jazeera. And that is the interesting point that I've made, and that's the rhetoric right at the start of the war was complete obliteration of Hamas, leave them with no capability to attack Israel. Just makes you wonder if if their opinion in terms of what they want from it has slightly changed. Is it now a case of getting the hostages out, and then that'll be the end of the military campaign? Some analysts, experts think so, other ones think not. So interesting really to see how that plays out. He goes on to say, yet here he's accepting a deal that has been on the table for many weeks, which is absolutely true. This is a deal that other countries, 2 countries at least, have tried to put this deal to Netanyahu before the beginning of this week, and he said, no, not doing it, not dealing with them, no fuel will be coming in, we're not letting any more ambulances in, etc., etc. We've heard the words before, and then all of a sudden, maybe pressure from the USA, maybe pressure from the UK, maybe pressure from other countries. Netanyahu seems to have changed his mind and then just gone for this deal, which is interesting. Yet here he's accepting a deal that has been on the table for many weeks through a kind of political diplomacy, he added. El-Masri said that if a deal goes through, Hamas will be able to sell it, and this is true, this is the point, will sell it as a kind of victory, and so will Netanyahu to some extent. But I don't know. How much of a victory will it be for Netanyahu just to get the hostages back if, hypothetically, Hamas then go on to attack again in the future? If they've not wiped out all the capability, and they may have done, we don't know. We can only go from the photos that we've seen and the videos that we've seen that have been coming out on social media. But if he's not wiped out the ability for Hamas to make more attacks in the future, and the planning and preparation, and the tunnels. Look at these hundreds and hundreds of miles of tunnels, and how many tunnels do we know that have been wiped out? Not many. When asked whether a truce could be the start of further negotiations for a permanent ceasefire, El Masri said, "I'm not personally very optimistic about that." So, interesting read. And it's just one of the many similar views that's now coming out on social media. Again, BBC has edited out calls for a ceasefire in its coverage of the Scottish BAFTA Award ceremony on November 19th. This is a story that's on the BBC website. If you're interested, please take a look. It's not one that we really want to be covering on here. This, however, is interesting. One video posted on the Israeli military's English language X account showed the entrance to a tunnel which led to a room with an air conditioning unit and nearby bathrooms. An Israeli military press release also said a living room, kitchen, and a hiding place, if a tunnel wasn't enough, were found in the facility. The release of the findings prove Hamas operates systematically from within the hospitals. Hamas has denied the claim, and health workers have said there were no noticeable presence of the group at medical facilities. Commentators have also noted that the existence of tunnels and rooms under Al-Shifa does not in itself confirm Israel's claim that the hospital facility was used as a Hamas operational headquarters. In a Monday interview with CNN with Christian Amanpour, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak said Israel had itself helped to build underground facilities at the hospital probably 4 decades ago, saying they were built to enable more space for the operation of the hospital within the very limited size of this compound. A report by the Israeli site Ynet also detailed Israel's construction under Al-Shifa dating back to 1983, built during Israel's physical presence in Gaza from 1967 to 2005. It was not immediately clear if the facilities displayed by Israel's military were the same as those referenced by Barak in the Ynet report. Post by the Israeli Defense Force. A first look into Hamas's underground city underneath the Shifa hospital complex. See, this is interesting because they're allowing certain reporters and certain people. There's been some reporters from the BBC in there today doing some filming. So, of course, they must feel it's now safe enough to allow that to happen, which is interesting. But it doesn't necessarily feel as though there was a massive amount of battles that took place there. Or not that we've heard, anyway. Our videos on this website are always very slow to play and not usually in English. So we're not going to hold up much hope for that. In fact, we'll try that one later. I think I can get that from a different website as well, so I've seen it on there, so we'll get it off Twitter directly as well. Israeli army preventing Al-Shifa ambulances from evacuating patients. This came out this morning again on the BBC, but also CNN reported it. The Palestine Red Crescent Society, the PRCS, says that 5 hours in a convoy evacuating the wounded and patients from Al-Shifa Hospital is still stranded at the checkpoint separating northern Gaza from its south. Israeli forces are obstructing its passage, putting lives at risk, the PRCS says. And this is the post they put out this morning. 5 hours have passed and the evacuation convoy for the wounded and patients from Al-Shifa Hospital is still stranded at the checkpoint separating North and South Gaza. Occupation forces obstruct its passage, conducting through inspections of ambulances, putting the lives of it's such a terrible website. The Palestine RCS. Let's have a look on Twitter on that one. Let's have a look at the Palestine RCS Twitter page. Did I spell that wrong? Possibly. Yes. So let's find that post from this morning. I mean, look at this from an hour ago. This is a full statement released on the PRCS. This is on the difficulties that they've been having inside, trying to get the ambulances out, which is really small. Give me a moment. That's so blurry and small, it's ridiculous. Can you read that? No, I can't read that either. On Monday night, 20th of November 2023, the Israeli Occupation Forces spokesperson posted a video with allegations made against the PRCS, interrogating a man named Hamal Riyad. Won't try and pronounce that when it's so blurry, claiming to be an employee of the Ministry of Health, giving fabricated testimony on what he saw while seeking refuge at the PRCS complex in Gaza. Some of the atrocious claims he made included Hamas using the PRCS complex Al-Shifa hospital as operational location to hide weapons is so blurry. In addition, he claims that this led to the usage of civilians seeking refuge as human shields. A claim that I've heard quite a lot, really. The PRCS today, more than ever, have been really sort of vocal in what they've been in coming out with things that are not particularly flattering. And this was this morning. This is before they put the previous statement out regarding the troubles they were having getting the ambulances through. 14 PRCS ambulances accompanied by the UN and Doctors Without Borders have arrived at Al-Shifa Hospital to evacuate the wounded and the patients. So from that we can probably take that at the minute there's no fighting around the Al-Shifa Hospital. And I thought there'd be more. I thought it'd just be days and days of endless battles, potentially the IDF fighting Hamas in tunnels underneath the hospital, but we've only really seen one video, one photo of tunnels underneath the hospital. Anyway, what else is on here? Let's have a look. Okay. Let's have a look what's been in Al Jazeera today. And again, it's just following on the same timeline as what we saw previously, but it's nice when it's linked together like this so you can read everything in one in one block rather than trying to search through every website to try and find out new information. So it says here, the report, this is on Al Jazeera. Israel is expected this evening to receive a list of the captives who will be released, according to an Israeli media report. The government of Israel does not yet know the names of the captives being released or how many will be released on Thursday. Haaretz reported the families of the abductees will not be informed in advance of their release, and the release could begin as early as 10 a.m., which is 8 a.m. GMT, and that would be tomorrow. White House have been speaking out in a statement posted on X. White House called the deal a testament to the diplomacy and determination of individuals across the US government to bring Americans home. Of course, many nationalities are expected to be included in this release deal. In addition, it added that the United States would continue working to secure the release of all remaining captives. In a subsequent video, White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said the deal was thanks to President Biden's personal leadership and involvement. Right. Kirby added that the US is going to keep supporting Israel, make sure they've got the tools and capabilities they need to go after Hamas, and ensure the humanitarian aid reaches Gaza. So a lot more work to do, but it's a good day today, he said. The administration of US President Joe Biden has opposed repeated calls for a ceasefire. And this is the thing. No one's calling this a ceasefire. They're calling it a pause. But I'm not overly sure what the difference is. And the White House put a post out earlier. Thanks to President Biden's leadership, a deal has been struck between Israel and Hamas to release more than 50 hostages that Hamas have been holding. The deal will also allow for a pause in the fighting. And if that said would allow for a ceasefire, would anybody think it was any different? I'm not sure. And a much needed surge of humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza. One moment, please. I mean, the Americans have been very confident that nothing will go wrong and that this pause in the fighting will last. I hope they're right. I hope they're right. I really hope they're right. The International Commission of Jurists, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch have called on Switzerland. That's not even important to us at the minute. All these stories are there if you want to read them. Again, these are all off the Al Jazeera website. They put a timeline together of events that have unfolded today. And this is Marwan Bishar. This is interesting. The Qataris finally were able to Qataris, probably along with the Americans as well, but mainly the Qataris. Don't forget some of the Hamas leaders are based in Qatar. The Qataris finally were able to put a process in place that could withstand various shocks, but it will still be up to Israel and Hamas to implement the deal. I don't think the Israelis are serious. I think they might still find a way to violate it. That's interesting. The Israelis felt pressure to accept this, and hence they don't have good intentions going in. They're accepting this pause bitterly. I mean, look at the fighting that they had last night. It was due to be sort of signed off hours and hours before it eventually did get signed off. The Israelis felt pressure to accept this, and hence they don't have good intentions going in. They are accepting this pause bitterly, and they can't wait until it's over so they can continue with the invasion. Nevertheless, having a process in place will help the process to be prolonged, for more captives to be released, to move from a humanitarian pause to a truce, perhaps eventually a full ceasefire. And if you remember, this is what we mentioned earlier regarding the hospital. Vasily Nebenzia made the comments during a hearing at the UN Security Council focused on the impact of the fighting in Gaza on women and children. He said, Russian envoy to UN says yet to see any convincing evidence of Hamas positions at Gaza hospital. Remember, we've not really heard about a massive amount of fighting that took place at the hospital. We have all heard allegations of Hamas command posts and bunkers located in these facilities, but we have yet to see any convincing evidence of those, he said. The statement is a response to Israeli claims that Hamas houses operational positions in the hospitals, most notably Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, using the people as human shields. But Israel has only released a handful of photos as proof, with many observers saying the so-called evidence is far from irrefutable. Hamas has denied the claim. Nebenzia noted, "We particularly like to stress the unacceptability of denying humanitarian access to children, which is an absolute priority given Gaza's appalling conditions. As a result, more children have died in Gaza over the past month than in all other conflicts over the past few years combined," he said. And of course, the picture is from the second hospital, the Indonesian hospital, that ran out of fuel on November 12th. Although I think some of the people are still there. There's so many stories that have come out today. Islamic Relief have released a statement saying it welcomes the pause in fighting in Gaza and the safe release of civilian hostages and detained children. But the humanitarian group warned that a temporary pause will not be enough to end the bloodshed and address the humanitarian needs of the wounded and displaced. A pause will have little worth if the killing resumes in a few days. The international community must use this brief window of opportunity to work towards a permanent ceasefire and an end to the siege. Wow. Just checking to see if there's any audio from Gaza at the minute, and there's not. There's not. Speaking during a press conference after Pope Francis met separately with Palestinians and Israeli relatives of captives in Gaza, Shireen Awad Hilal said the religious leader used the term genocide. When he shared the stories of families that have been killed in Gaza, he mentioned, "I see the genocide," said Hilal, who teaches at the Bethlehem Bible College. Bethlehem. "It was very clear the word genocide did not come from us, it came from His Holiness Pope Francis," she said, adding that all 10 Palestinian attendees heard him use the word. But a statement sent by the Vatican spokesman Matteo Bruni in response to a question texted by a reporter said the opposite. "I'm not aware that a pope used such a word. He used terms that expressed during the general audience and words that in any case represent the terrible situation that is being lived out in Gaza," Bruni's statement said, according to Reuters news agency. Right, bear with me 2 minutes while I just grab a drink and we shall check some more sources. 2 seconds, thank you. Okay, thank you for that. Right, let's carry on. I mean, it's fairly quiet on the ground at the minute, so it's just a case of looking through some of the articles, finding out what's been said in the last couple of hours, see if there's anything that's interesting out there. Again, this is all at the minute from the Al Jazeera website, which has been busy today with updates. Just scroll back to the top and have a little look. Okay. See, that's from the Times of Israel. IDF exposes more tunnels under Shifa. Hamas says Gaza death toll climbed to 14,532. Wow. Israel lists 300 Palestinian prisoners, mostly teens, eligible for release. Cabinet vows to continue the war against Hamas after a pause in fighting. IDF ground up toll hits 70. Those were the numbers that came out earlier. And Netanyahu thanks Biden for efforts to secure hostages. And this is the confirmation that we got earlier today. Release of 50 abducted women and children to begin 10 a.m. Thursday, and that's from an Israeli official. Israel said to receive a list of first batch of hostages to be freed. Senior Israeli official says Hamas, desperate for more days of halted fighting, could end up releasing up to 80. See, this as well has been fantastic news for Israel because they get some of the hostages back, which is what we all want, of course. It's also great news at the minute for Hamas because it buys them so much time to. And don't forget, they've also said things like for 6 hours. I've got the list. I've got the deal list, so we'll have a look at that in a second and work out who gets what. Essentially, Israel get this and Hamas get this, but also there's things in there like Israel have agreed not to fly a drone in the air for 6 hours. Of course, that then allows Hamas to move around freely without being seen. Although I'm sure Israel have got more in the way of, things they can use to see what's going on. And there's a story on there as well. So take a look. If you get the time to have a look at Times of Israel website, there's a big story on there from David Horowitz, who's fantastic. Why Israel agreed to the hostage deal and how Hamas may intend to exploit it. The cabinet's 35-3 vote shows ministers believed there was no better arrangement and were persuaded the war will resume afterward, which was a big thing last night. That's what a lot of the arguments were surrounding by, is that many of the cabinet, war cabinet, and also the parliamentary cabinet thought that this could be an end to the war. And of course, they don't want that. But that's a really good story from David Horowitz. So if you get the chance to have a read of that one, definitely do that. Let's have a little read of this. At the very start of Israel war against Hamas, an Israeli official told reporters that the IDF would strike Hamas everywhere in Gaza, even at the cost of possibly harming some of the 240 hostages held there. If the IDF had information on a specific location where hostages were believed to be held, it would not target that location, but otherwise its operations would not be limited by fears of inadvertently harming the hostages, which we've not heard any reports of that happening yet. As the ground operation continued, however, some war cabinet members made it clear that the entire approach to the fate of the hostages had gradually changed. This culminated on Saturday night with war cabinet observer Gadi Eisenkot, privately telling families of the hostages that the release of their loved ones was the first priority of the war, even ahead of destroying Hamas. A War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz stating at a press conference that Israel potentially has decades in which to destroy Hamas, while the imperative to secure the release of hostages was urgent. Again, more rhetoric, maybe that the focus has changed. That evolved mindset is at the heart of the agreement approved overnight, Tuesday, Wednesday, by the full Israeli cabinet. The war is being suspended for 4 days to enable the release of some 50 Israeli hostages, and the halt in the fighting, get rid of that, the halt in the fighting could potentially be extended by an extra day for each group of 10 more Israeli hostages that Hamas can produce and release. The fact that the cabinet ministers voted 35-3 in favour of the deal with the terror group that seized and is holding most of the hostages, and that organised and led to the slaughter of 1,200 people in southern Israel on October the 7th, underlines how potentially advantageous Israel's political and security leadership believes the deal to be. Obviously, Israel would have wanted an agreement to secure the return of all hostages. Ministers were told that there was no such deal to be made. Obviously, too, Israel would have wanted the IDF to have itself located and rescued all, or at least more, of the hostages. That's the thing. Remember, the IDF forces have not rescued any of the hostages, given all the time they've been inside Gaza. Without necessity, obviously, too, Israel would have wanted the IDF to have itself located and rescued all, or at least more, of the hostages without necessitating any deal with the terrorists, any release of Palestinian security prisoners, and any halt to the war. But that option, ministers were told, was not available either. Only one hostage, so that's me getting that wrong, only one hostage has been extricated from the Gaza to date, Orit Meglidish, 3 weeks ago in an extremely high-risk operation, even as the IDF has taken greater control of many of Hamas's strongholds in the north of the Strip. The case of Nashon Walshman, a soldier abducted and held hostage by Hamas in 1994, underscores the difficulty of such rescues. In Washman's case, Israel knew precisely where he was being held, in the West Bank, just outside Jerusalem. But a rescue attempt proved disastrous, with Washman killed by his captors as IDF commandos attempted to break in, and the lead officer in the rescue attempt killed as well. So not easy. And they've not even said that they do know where they are, have they? The deal, the ministers were told, was the only hostage release option currently available for all the pain over those who will remain captive in Gaza, including many who are elderly and many parents. Almost all ministers were persuaded that it was a deal with the devil that nonetheless had to be done. But I don't think it was done easy. There was many arguments into the small hours last night. Many arguments. Critical to the near unanimous support, with only Itamar Ben-Gvir's Otzma Yehudit ministers voting against it, was the pledge by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the war will resume once the deal is carried out, and the war's declared aims remain unchanged. The destruction of Hamas military and governance capabilities and the return of all hostages. Ministers were told that the progress of the ground offensive thus far was central to Hamas's agreement to the deal, and that resuming the ground offensive was crucial to the effort to secure the release of the rest of the hostages. Given that even some of the coalition's most hardline elements, notably including I'm rubbish at these names, Bezalel Smotrich Religious Zionism Party, was that close? I think so. Consider the deal to be well worth taking. The question must plainly be asked, why did Hamas agree to it, even offer it? Really interesting story, that. Michael Horowitz, full story, is there in the Times of Israel. So much going on. So much going on. 1 second, please. So this is the deal that came out earlier. I wanted to put this up so you can have a look at it. If you've not seen this, it's on social media. Israel and Hamas agreed to 4-day truce. Could be extended, of course. The agreement, mediated by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, is the biggest breakthrough in 47 days of fighting in Gaza. Now, terms of the deal: Hamas to release 50 women and children held in the Gaza Strip, and Israel to release 150 women and children held in Israeli prisons. Starting time. Well, it says here will be announced in the next 24 hours. We believe it's going to be around 10 o'clock Thursday morning UK time. Duration will last 4 days, subject to an extension. Will be paused for an additional day for every further 10 captives freed from Gaza. Israel will stop a military vehicle movement and allow people to travel from north to south along the Salah al-Dan road, but they're not being allowed to come back from the south back to the north. Humanitarian aid. More humanitarian aid convoys and relief aid, including fuel, will be let into Gaza during this time. And Israel, of course, said that that wouldn't happen. It is happening. And final one is, bear with me. Not to end the war. Israel PM Netanyahu says this is not an end to the war and that his military will press on after the pause. So that is the official deal as negotiated by Qatar, Egypt, and the USA. Interesting.
Hey everybody, it is Steve. We are
So this is interesting. This is away from Israel and away from Gaza, but this has just come across on social media, and I wanted to bring you the latest on this. Find out exactly what's going on. Bear with me. Okay. Just getting the latest on it now. So, possible terror attack. Two dead in an explosion at US-Canada border crossing in New York. Pictures that are coming out of there don't look particularly nice either. Let's see if we can get some news on this. Explosions at US-Canada border was attempted terror attack, police source have said. So it's like Fox News are claiming that. Let's have a look and see what Fox News are saying. Vehicle explosion closes Rainbow Bridge at the US-Canada border. Wow. Picture coming from Fox News. Incredible. This is from Alex Salvi, developing security camera footage of the explosion at the US-Canada border crossing. It just looks unbelievable. One moment, please. It's fine. Wow, look at that. Security camera footage of the explosion at the US-Canada border crossing. Not sure there's any audio on it, but we'll have a look. Wow. Sources are saying that two people who occupied the vehicle have died in the explosion, and one other border security agent has been injured. Laura Loomer says the FBI confirming the bomb explosion was a jihad plot that was destined for central New York City and was intercepted at the Canadian border. Wow. Laura Loomer posted that on Twitter earlier. Jihad plot in New York City. The FBI is suspecting that the car bomb explosion was terrorist related. Fox News has said here, according to Fox News, it was an attempted terrorist attack on the US and Canada border. Wow. Incredible. Let's have a look at the Fox website and get the latest on that one.